Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Tonight on Gravitas, we get you the story of 8 Indian Navy veterans who are being held in solitary confinement in Qatar. They have been in detention for 7 months without any charges. Let me repeat that. 7 months without any charges. What exactly is their story? Why have they been detained? And why is Qatar refusing to grant them bail? Also, what is New Delhi doing to bring these veterans back home? Stay tuned as we tell you all that you need to know and join us in our Gravitas campaign. You can tweet using the hashtag #BringOurVeteransHome. Help build pressure on the Qatari authorities so that our veterans can be brought back. Also on the show for you tonight, we get to the latest on the battle for Bakhmut amid the Russia-Ukraine war. Why is this battle so significant and why are the next few hours crucial? Stampedes have killed 11 in Pakistan, showing the level of desperation and despair among the people of the cash-strapped country. We get you a detailed ground report. There has been a rise in Wuhan virus cases in India. We get you the story behind the numbers. We begin the show tonight with a question for one of the smallest but one of the richest countries in the world, Qatar. Why are 8 former Indian Navy officers, captains and commanders being held in solitary confinement without any charges being framed and without bail being given, despite the fact that there are no formal charges yet? 7 months back, they were arrested in Doha over accusations of spying. 7 months on, the accusations are yet to be framed in a formal charge sheet presented to a court of law. The CEO of the company they were working for is from Oman. His name is Khamis Al-Ajmi. He was also arrested, but he has been released. Why then are the Indians still in jail? If they were spying, then why was the man from Oman released? We ask again, if the charge is as serious as spying, why was one person released and the Indians kept in jail? This is a story that needs to be told because way too often, Indians working abroad have been wrongfully detained and forced to spend years in jail without being proven guilty. We cannot let these 8 veterans meet the same fate. We cannot let them face prosecution for crimes they did not commit. So tonight, we are going to raise some tough questions, not just for the authorities in Qatar, but also for the officials in New Delhi. Questions like, what exactly are the charges against the detainees? Why have the charges not been framed yet? Why are they being held in solitary confinement? What is the status of their health and well-being? And above all, what is New Delhi doing to bring them back? Simultaneously, we will be running an online campaign to seek the release of these former Navy officers. If you have any thoughts about this story, you can share them with us through the hashtag #BringOurVeteransHome. I repeat, hashtag #BringOurVeteransHome. We will be also getting your voices on the matter to better understand the intricacies of repatriation and unlawful detentions. But first, let me give you a lowdown of what exactly happened. This story begins in 2017. This is when the 8 officers in question were employed by a defense firm in Qatar. The name of this firm is Dhara Global Technologies and Consulting Services. It apparently provides training to Qatar's Navy personnel. The CEO of this company is Khamis Al-Ajmi. He is a retired Air Force officer from Oman. The 8 officers had been working at Al-Ajmi's firm for over 5 years. And little did they know about the price that they would have to pay for their service. On the midnight of the 30th of August 2022, these officers were apparently summoned by Qatar's Interior Ministry, and once there, they were asked to accompany the officials for a training program. But ever since that day, the officials never returned home. They were detained and put behind bars. So was their CEO, Khamis Al-Ajmi. When he went to secure their release, he was briefly detained by the Qatari authorities. But in November, right before the Qatar World Cup, he was released from prison. But the officers were not. And why is that? Does this indicate clear discrimination against Indians, even in treatment accorded to prisoners? Also, who exactly are these officers? Let me take you through their names. There's Captain Navtej Singh Gill, Captain Birendra Kumar Verma, Captain Saurabh Vashisht, Commander Amit Nagpal, Commander Puranendu Tiwari, Commander Sugunakar Pakala, Commander Sanjeev Gupta, and Sailor Ragesh. Like I said, some of these officers have impeccable records of service. For instance, Captain Navtej Singh Gill received the Sword of Honor as a cadet. He was also the navigation officer for INS Virat, India's longest-serving warship. And on the other hand, we have Commander Puranendu Tiwari. In the year 2019, he was awarded with Pravasi Bharatiya Samman. This is the highest honor for overseas Indians. But as of the 30th of March 2023, both these reputed former officers, along with 6 of their associates, are in solitary confinement in Qatar. Why? What have they done? Well, there is no clear answer. Initially, reports suggested that they were charged with espionage for conducting spy operations for Israel. But since then, those familiar with the matter have rejected all such theories. And last we checked, the Indian side had not been formally informed about any charges filed against these individuals. So on what basis has Qatar detained them? Why have the charges not been made public? Why are the authorities in Qatar taking so long? I'm asking these questions because the families of these veterans are beginning to lose all hope of getting justice, of seeing their loved ones again. They are panic-stricken and clueless about what lies ahead. Have a look at these tweets. They are from Meetu Bhargava, the sister of Commander Puranendu Tiwari. For the last 2 months, she has been repeatedly calling on Qatar's government to repatriate the veterans on humanitarian grounds. She says all of these defense personnel are going through a mental breakdown. Besides not being able to keep good health, most of them have lost 10 to 15 kilograms in weight. Besides facing a host of serious medical issues. The Indian External Affairs Ministry is aware of this. India made 8 bail pleas for their release, but all 8 times the pleas were rejected. And why is that? Was our mission ever told why? If Qatar has nothing to say, then what exactly is it hiding and why? Have they tried to get bail for the veterans this year as well? In December, the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, issued a statement. He said, and I'm quoting, "This is a very sensitive case. Their interests are foremost in our minds. Ambassadors and senior officials are in constant touch with Qatar's government. We assure they are our priority." And on the 16th of March, MEA spokesperson Arind Bakshi issued another statement. He said, and I'm quoting, "We attach high priority to the matter. There are continuous efforts by our embassy in Doha for the resolution of the matter so that early return and repatriation can take place of the detained Indian nationals." What is the sensitivity that was mentioned? When can we expect them to return home, given the fact that the Qatar government says nothing, does nothing? It is the 30th of March. Countless more statements have been issued. The MEA keeps saying the issue is their top priority. But you see, the delay in securing their release tells a different story. So some questions are bound to be asked. Is New Delhi putting enough pressure on Qatar's government? As for Qatar, when is it going to frame the charges against these officials? What is this delay all about? Also, in what condition is it keeping these officials? Earlier today, we sent a detailed mail to Qatar's embassy in New Delhi regarding this. On your screen, in fact, is a copy of our letter. We are awaiting a formal response from them. Remember, this long custody of the veterans for reasons not yet in public domain is a big test for Indian diplomacy and its engagement with the Indian diaspora, especially in West Asia. And here's why I say this. Have a look at the figure on your screen. When it comes to Indians being jailed abroad, West Asia tops that list. Bahrain has around 265 Indian prisoners. Kuwait, 428. Qatar, 682. Saudi Arabia, 1,362. The UAE, 1,966. Many of them may have been involved in crimes and been convicted. But what about those languishing in jails only under suspicion? Do these prisoners receive the same treatment as the others? Or is there discrimination? The saga of these 8 veterans detained in Qatar has come as a telling reminder about a bitter reality. And to discuss this and more, I'm joined by Ambassador Vivek, former Secretary, Indian Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you very much for being here on the broadcast. What do you make of the fact that these 8 Indian Navy veterans have been held without charges for 7 months? No charges yet. They have been held in solitary confinement, which is the worst form of imprisonment leading to mental torture.
I think your indignation and the concerns of the families are entirely justified. Given the circumstances of the case, I think any Indian who hears that 8 Navy officers, former Navy officers, are in such detention would be horrified and very upset. But I would agree with Minister Jaishankar when he says that this case, and I would add that such cases are indeed very sensitive, and therefore they require to be dealt with diplomatically in a very sensitive manner. The problem is, and that is your problem as I can see, and that is my problem too, that there is nothing in the public domain about the reasons why these people have been, these officers or former officers have been detained. Now, the fact that no judicial charges have been framed as yet can be looked upon in two ways, Molly. The first is that we in India are used to due process. We are used to procedures established by law to be followed, even in cases involving espionage. And in our case, the police and other investigating agencies are bound by the law very strictly to produce people before magistrates, etc., once they've been detained or arrested. I think in West Asia, especially in Gulf states, they follow a different legal system. So I, for one, uh, I'm aware of this, having served there. The second point is that it is my experience that these cases are best resolved diplomatically. Now, uh, the minister has said, and the MEA has said repeatedly, that we are engaged with the Qataris. And I'm sure that as part of this engagement, some information which would be available with our authorities, which they are not disclosing for entirely understandable reasons, because the disclosure of this information can harm the interests of these 8 officers. Therefore, uh, what we can legitimately expect of our government and of the External Affairs Minister and the diplomats is that the engagement that they have with Qatar on this matter is expedited, is intensified, that our concerns are fully conveyed to them. Secondly, there is this question that we don't know whether these officers have been extended consular access. Now, as you know, anyone who is detained by a foreign authority has the right of getting to meet his accredited representatives of that country. So that is a question that any of these family members and others can legitimately ask of our government whether they've been granted consular access. And if they haven't been granted consular access, then what are the Qataris saying for denying consular access to these officers? That is a legitimate question. And in fact, that is a question that we have to ask our government, because it is only when our representatives meet these officers that they would get an opportunity to hear their side of the story. Because as of now, we are all in the dark. And I'm not bothered of being in the dark as long as I'm assured, and I think their families are assured, that the government is engaged, purposefully engaged, trying to expedite this and get this matter resolved, as so that what the official spokesperson of the ministry is saying is shown to be factually correct, that we are working for their earliest return and repatriation to India.
Absolutely. As the ambassador is pointing out, a series of questions. Why are they being held in solitary confinement? Why is Qatar refusing to grant them bail? Why have no charges been placed against them? The list of questions is long. You can join our Gravitas campaign, #BringOurVeteransHome, as we continue to raise these questions, thanking Ambassador Kaju as well for helping us better understand these developments and what really is going on. Shifting focus for now, our next story comes from Ukraine. The small mining city of Bakhmut has been the site of the bloodiest infantry battle. Ukraine has now acknowledged that the Russians have gained considerable power inside the eastern battlefield. Now, does this mean that it's almost the end of Bakhmut? What does this mean for the Russia-Ukraine conflict? While the chief of the infamous mercenary force Wagner Group is saying that their forces and equipment have been badly damaged, the battle for Bakhmut has also practically destroyed the Ukrainian army. Looking at Russia's advancement in the eastern city, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that unless his country wins the drawn-out battle, Russia could start building international support for a deal that could require Ukraine to make unacceptable compromises. The Ukrainian president is saying that if Bakhmut fell to Moscow's forces, then the Russian president would sell the victory to the West, China, and Iran.
He will sell this victory. He will sell this victory to West, to his society, to China, to Iran, to all the countries, to Brazil, to Latin America countries, not to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Of course, they really understand, you know, from details, and they feel this dangerous because they're neighbors.
Zelensky also talked about how Putin sees the battle and emphasized that if the Russian leader senses that Ukraine is falling weak, he will keep pushing on. The Ukrainian leader has decided to take things slow and is perceiving the war as a pie. He said that there are always pieces of victories with small steps, and small victories can help in winning the war. Bakhmut has been the focal point of the assault. As far as this invasion is concerned, it's been a crucial one. Ukrainian armed forces saying that it has remained on the defensive for about 5 months, but now they are planning to play the counter-offensive. But has this decision come too late as the Russians advance slowly inside Bakhmut in the intense street fighting? The capture of Bakhmut might give the Russian army access to the whole of eastern Ukraine. And that is why it is so significant. Zelensky has shown concern about the rest of the parts of the country which would be threatened if Bakhmut is taken away. He says that Russia could get an open road to the cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And what is the significance of these cities? They are heavily interconnected. They have more than just one route, and this could give Russia an open road into the region and ultimately to Kiev. But that is assuming that Russia can capture Bakhmut. Zelensky says that Ukraine's loss in defending Bakhmut would be more of a political defeat than a tactical one. Bakhmut's loss could cause a big dent as it would build pressure among the Ukrainians and the international community. The Ukrainian leader saying that the defeat would force him to go ahead with an unacceptable truce. So where would the pressure to accept the truce come from? Zelensky feels that it may come from his own people. The president saying that his people are tired of the war, which seems to be everlasting. He added that his society will push him to strike a compromise with Russia. But why is Russia trying so hard? What importance does Bakhmut hold for it? To put it simply, this city held little strategic significance, but the relentless fighting has made it a rallying cry and a major political battleground for both the sides. For the Russians, Bakhmut represents the biggest prize since June. That is when the Russian forces captured Severodonetsk, the second most populous city in Luhansk Oblast. And for the Ukrainians, Bakhmut is the epitome of its resistance against the Russian onslaught. The small mining city has faced relentless attacks, and its surroundings have taken a heavy toll. In the latest, the Ukrainian forces have repelled 28 enemy attacks. The Ukrainian army saying that the number of daily attacks has declined by nearly half over the past few weeks. For how long will the Ukrainian forces sustain their defense? We cannot be too sure, as the armed forces confess that Russians have achieved a significant degree of success in storming Bakhmut. Will Putin's forces finally capture the eastern city? Would Russia advance further into eastern Ukraine? We will get to know as the war continues. Moving on for now, there has been a mysterious blast near the India-Pakistan border. It was a high-intensity blast. It created a huge crater in the ground. How many died? How many were injured? Thankfully, no one. But the question is, who was behind this blast? Who is to be held accountable? Here's what happened. It was around 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday. The residents of Kathua district in Jammu and Kashmir heard a loud explosion. They rushed out of their homes in fright. There are 6 towns and 512 villages in this district. It has a population of over 850,000. It is suspected to have been caused by an improvised explosive device, and the security forces have been put on high alert in the border belts. Troops are patrolling the Jammu-Pathankot highway. A search operation was launched. The troops found a live grenade. Was it lobbed to target the security forces? You see, the blast site was quite close to a police post, and chances are the post was the intended target. No casualties were reported. There was commotion at the spot. Security forces were deployed. Troops were patrolling the area. And then a live grenade is found. What does that tell you? Is India's neighbor up to something? Was the blast a part of a bigger plan? And this blast also comes at a time when terror groups have been using drones to drop weapons, drugs, ammunition, arms, money across the border. In November last year, a Pakistani drone, in fact, dropped an IED, 2 pistols, a detonator, and Indian currency worth nearly 5 lakh rupees in Samba district. In May, another drone carrying grenades and sticky bombs was shot down in Kathua district. A record 16 such drones were shot down in 2022. Let's go back further. In 2021, several explosive-filled tiffin boxes were found hidden near the border. They were recovered from Amritsar, Kapurthala, Fazilka, and Tarantaran. And now there has been another blast. Nobody has claimed responsibility for it. It comes at an interesting time. The number of active terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir at a record low. Security forces saying only 28 local terrorists are functioning in the Kashmir Valley. So what does the latest explosion mean? Is Pakistan trying to reignite terror? This is a developing story, and we will be keeping a close eye on the updates. Our next story comes from Pakistan, where the major spike in inflation in the cash-strapped country has left millions hungry and struggling to get a day's meal. Such is the level of desperation and despair among the people of Pakistan that multiple deaths are being reported from centers distributing free ration because of the stampedes that are taking place there. Our next report telling you more.
What can be a better measure of despair than poverty? What can be a better measure of desperation than stampedes caused by poverty? Such stampedes are becoming the new normal in Pakistan, especially outside the country's ration shops. There was a stampede at a flour distribution center in the city of Sahiwal. 2 people died, 56 others were injured. Reports say the stampede was a mix of mismanagement and a glitch with an app that was used to identify the beneficiaries. Thanks to this glitch, people had to stand in a queue for up to 4 hours. The people were clearly agitated. Something must have gone wrong because the police arrived at the scene. And when it did, people began panicking. One thing led to another. There was manhandling, bit and charging, and before you know it, there was a stampede. Something similar happened in the Punjab province. There was a stampede during a flower distribution drive. At least 4 people died, all elderly. In Muzaffargarh, 7 people were injured after the wall of a banquet hall fell on them. This was yet again at a flower distribution point. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, dozens were injured in a similar stampede. So what's really happening in Pakistan? The country is cash-strapped and it has become the face of desperation. Earlier this month, Pakistan had announced a Ramadan relief package, one that included free flour. But this very free flour has now become a source of major stampedes. But who do you blame? The people who can no longer afford to buy basic necessities? The price of flour alone has gone up over 45% this year. Today there are protests across Pakistan. People are blocking roads, shouting slogans, raising their voices against mismanagement of the distribution centers. But who really is the villain in this story? The people, the distribution centers, or the government of Pakistan? One that has failed its people, one that has failed to secure a bailout. One that is so caught up in politicking that it can barely see the despair and desperateness in the eyes of its people.
Suspicion has been growing around TikTok. It has come under focus for espionage. As countries around the world impose bans on it, there is more bad news for China. India wants more Chinese applications banned. In fact, India's Ministry of Home Affairs has drawn up a list of 117 applications. It includes apps from not only China, but the Philippines and Nigeria as well. So which apps are these? A majority of them were related to dating, gaming and loans. And why does India want to ban them? For selling data to a foreign destination. In fact, the apps providing online loans were not even in the business of lending, but they were wreaking havoc nonetheless. What exactly did these loan applications do? They provided small amounts in instant loans with extremely high interest rates, ranging from 17 to 20%. And in many cases, Chinese firms issued fake invoices to companies running these illegal loan applications in India. They helped them launder money overseas. Several scams have been unearthed. Poor and gullible people were offered these loans without following the KYC norms. The borrowers had to provide mandatory access to the contacts, locations, and their phone storage in order to get the loans, and then they were harassed and blackmailed. The firms resorted to harsh recovery practices. The borrowers' data was misused to extort money. They were blackmailed over their morphed images. In fact, many ended up committing suicide. These loan apps had been mushrooming in India. And last month itself, 232 apps were banned on Google Play. These apps were also being handled by foreign entities. 138 of them were involved in betting, gambling, and money laundering. 94 of them offered unauthorized loan services. In August 2022, 54 more Chinese applications were banned in India. The list included some popular ones like Garena Free Fire and App Lock. These apps posed security issues and privacy threats. Google banned over 2,000 apps in the first half of 2022. In 2020, 267 apps were banned. This was India's first and the biggest crackdown on Chinese applications. It included TikTok, PUBG, Mobile, WeChat, Weibo, AliExpress, among others. And 3 years on, the saga still continues. Despite bans, China keeps coming up with new applications with the same old threats, data theft, espionage, and whatnot. But guess what? Even banning apps cannot save you from data theft. Threats to privacy and security continue to linger. And why is that? Because of bloatware. These are the apps that come pre-installed on mobile devices. They cannot be removed or even disabled. They are installed by handset manufacturers for extra revenue. This problem is particularly acute with Chinese mobile manufacturers. These apps collect user data and misuse them, and they often escape scrutiny. Not only India, several countries around the world, in fact, are also waking up to China's shady applications. TikTok had taken the center stage. The US went forward with a plan to ban it on official devices. So did the UK, Canada, the executive arm of the European Union, France, New Zealand. Now, what lies ahead is the immediate question. Is TikTok just the beginning? Will other countries also follow India's suit and ban other Chinese applications? What effect would this have on China? The country did not take India's previous bans well. How will it respond to other countries boycotting its applications? And as we talk about scrutinizing Chinese apps, China is plotting its own crackdown against Western applications. In his recent meeting with Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping presented a master game plan. He proposed blocking access to YouTube in Russia. How would Russia do that? With China's help. The People's Liberation Army is going to provide a part of the required tech, and the rest will be based on Russian and Belarusian developments. Reports say a group of Chinese cyber threat experts have already arrived in Moscow. They plan to analyze and come up with a technical roadmap to block YouTube in the country. The pilot project may be implemented by the Russian telecom giant, and if successful, by all other major providers. And if things go as planned, the YouTube giant will be blocked in Russia by the last quarter of this year. You see, YouTube is one of the largest platforms for anti-war content. It connects Russia with the rest of the world, and this is what Putin intends to target. He has labeled the internet as an invention of Western intelligence services. China is infamous for its internet control and censorship, and he is pushing for the same in Russia. Both the countries are at odds with the West. Now, both of them are devising a plan to restrict Western content. Let's now shift focus to India. Yesterday, we told you how the Wuhan virus has again started spreading across the country. The number of COVID-19 cases has now taken another jump. India is now witnessing the highest number of cases in the past 6 months. Is another wave of the deadly virus on the horizon? Our next report getting you the big picture.
India is facing a surge in COVID-19 cases. The numbers have jumped to over 3,000 cases. This is a roughly 40% increase since yesterday, although the daily positivity rate has been recorded at only 2.7%. Today's infection count is the highest in nearly 6 months. India had earlier reported over 3,000 cases in October. The country's total death count stands at over 530,000, with 14 deaths registered today. The deaths have been reported by 4 states. Although the country has a high recovery rate of over 98%, the state of Maharashtra has witnessed a 63% jump in its daily COVID-19 cases, with 694 fresh cases. This is the highest since October. Amid concerns over the spike in COVID-19 and H3N2 influenza cases, officials have held an emergency meeting after the national capital witnessed 300 fresh COVID-19 cases. The government has urged citizens not to panic and said that people who might be experiencing flu-like symptoms should wear masks when visiting hospitals. Although the Indian government has not made masks mandatory, authorities have advised citizens to adopt COVID-19 appropriate behavior. India has also stepped up genome sequencing. So what should a person do if they have fever-like symptoms? As per the advice of experts, a person should contact their doctor and not ignore the symptoms. The elderly and people with comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension and kidney failure should take special care, as they are more prone to catching an infection. The good news is that health experts say most Indians have antibodies to fight the infection. And even if there is a rise in number of cases, citizens will live a healthy life if they simply follow basic precautions.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. Thanks very much for watching. We are leaving you with Gravitas images.
So this certificate confirms that Sean is the first astronaut to go to the moon and back again. 1 point, it's a brand new rocket.